So good afternoon, everyone. And okay. So today we will start with a lecture on mid-fidelity prototyping, and also with a small exercise at the end. And then with Tommaso, you will investigate a bit more what is human-AI interaction. Okay. But let's talk about medium fidelity prototyping, which is actually the topic of the assignment 4 that will be published probably next week. Okay, basically in the assignment 4 you will need to first select which of the two prototypes should be the core of your project based on the heuristic evaluations you will receive, and then you will have to implement just 2 screens of your prototype in medium fidelity. So not the entire workflow, but just 2 screens, because it will be a very brief assignment, without check, by the way. So today we try to understand what are medium fidelity prototypes that differently from the low fidelity prototypes, which were on a paper and on drone. These are computer prototypes, so they are developed, they are created through a software. And these prototypes can also be interactive. So in your low fidelity prototypes, your interaction is simulated. There is the computer guy that simulates the behavior of the prototype by moving pieces depending on the action of the tester, for example. Here instead the interaction is more natural. So the prototype will be interactive. If I click on a button, I'm redirected to a new page, for example, or maybe there is a pop-up that automatically appears on the screen. You start rendering the user interface, although with some limits that we will see in a minute. You can accept some input, not all the input, but some. For sure, you accept some clicks on the interface to navigate in the interface. And you respond typically by switching pages only. So you cannot accept complex input like a string or something like that, and depending on the input, redirecting the user to different pages, the interaction will be fixed, and you will accept a limited set of input. So it's a medium fidelity, but it's also, it starts to be a high fidelity in look and feel, because the interface now starts to resemble, at least in the layout perspective, what it will be the high fidelity prototype, but it's low fidelity in depth. This means that you have a limited functionality, especially with respect to the low fidelity prototypes, because in a way, in a low fidelity prototypes, the functionality is simulated, so you ideally can achieve everything. Okay, so because there is a human that simulates the computer, you can also simulate complex algorithms, you can simulate complex behaviors. So you have, in a way, a high fidelity in functionality. Here instead you have a low fidelity in functionality, because again, it's a very simple interaction and you accept very simple input. So for example, I cannot move information from one page to another. This kind of prototypes are also known as mock-ups or wireframes. You can design a single screen, 2 screens like in the assignment 4, or the entire prototype in medium fidelity, and typically you design screens that are connected by a task. Okay, so you have a task to complete, and you design the exact workflow to complete that task. The interface, it's still imprecise. There are some limits. So a medium fidelity prototype should be in grayscale, so no colors, or black and white. It's the same. And the design is still imprecise. It's done on a computer, but it's still inspired by hand drawing. But you have, for example, the right sides of the buttons, the correct alignment between the different elements. So you start really see the layout of the final interface. The information is typically static. As I said before, everything is static, the interaction is static, the information that I can see in the page is static, and the path that I can follow through the different screens is always the same. Okay, but you can also start suggesting the layout and also the user device. So you have the right sides also of the interface. Yes, there's a question.
If we only have to create 2 screens.
Yes.
Then, and the blue part in the medium fidelity prototype is the interaction. That is not simulated. Then, which interaction do we have to do?
Okay, the question is about the assignment 4 that I anticipated is about making 2 screens of your prototype in medium fidelity. So first of all, medium fidelity is not all about interaction. It's also about placing the elements in the right position. It's about alignment. It's about sides of the elements. So there is the interaction, but it's not the only topic, the new thing. And also we will ask you to implement 2 screens that are in a way connected in your prototype. So you will likely design 2 consecutive screens of your prototype so that they are interactive in a way, because you can switch from one to another. Okay. And this is an example of how medium fidelity prototypes can suggest the user device. So in the first case, we know that it will be a website. In the middle, we have a desktop application, and here we have a mobile application. Okay? Within these boxes, we can design our prototype, but in a way, we can suggest the kind of devices we are targeting. And this is an example of one single page, in this case, prototyped in medium fidelity. So as you can see, it's still in grayscale, right? We have some text, some correct labels, like the items in the menu, or the title of the page. We can understand that this is probably an e-commerce website. But then we also have a placeholder for other text, okay? Like the description of the product is not important at this point. The important thing is that we know that it's an e-commerce, and that this is the page for a specific element, okay? You can click on this, probably, and there are some buttons that are active. So if I click on the home page, not here, but in the real prototype, I will be redirected to the home page. But it's completely fine if you have some buttons that cannot be clicked, okay? So you can click for a subset of things, typically the things that you need to complete a task. And by the way, this is a prototype that has been developed in mockups, which is this tool for rapid prototyping, but there are also other tools as well, and we will in particular see Figma in this course. But then, as you can see that the things are aligned. There are some icons that are probably in their final version, like for rating a product, so that we know that there are reviews, that there are ratings of these products. Here we can see that there is a placeholder for an image, so but the size is correct. Okay, so It's not important to have the real image here. It's important to understand that here there is an image and this is the proportion and it's aligned in this way. So there is something that is well aligned with the final high fidelity prototypes. There are some placeholders, so you should really decide what you will need to put there. So what can be a placeholder and what instead should be something more real. Of course, you can design these mock-ups from scratch with this kind of tools, and we will see a tutorial in a moment. But typically what happens is that the same tools provides you with some libraries, some UI elements that you can easily reuse. So here are some examples. For example, if you need to design the keyboard, you can of course starting from scratch, designing every little box with the letter inside. But you can of course look for an already implemented keyboard, for example in medium fidelity. And you can reuse these components. So basically these tools for rapid prototyping can be used for medium fidelity but also for high fidelity prototyping. In practice in this course we will ask you a working application with some code, but you could also hypothetically create your high fidelity prototypes even with these prototyping tools without code, okay? But we will use them for medium fidelity. And as I said before, there are different tools that can be used. One is mockups, but we also have Figma, the one that we suggest in this course to be used in this course. We can have Balsamiq. I don't know if you are familiar with any of these tools. How many of you already knows Figma? Okay, some of you. So probably the tutorial will be a bit boring, but then there will be an exercise useful to understand how to design in medium fidelity. This is another example of medium fidelity prototypes, and just to show you that also the interaction is fixed. So I can click only on a subset of buttons, for example, and the buttons are always the same. So I can always go from page A to page B, and I cannot move from page A to page C, for example. So it's a fixed path. Yes, you can also create medium fidelity prototypes in PowerPoint, for example, but it's not the case of this course. What are the drawbacks of this prototyping method? The interaction is typically just based on clicks. Okay, so you click, you do not interact really with the interface. So you do not have text entry, you cannot enter data, you cannot select elements in a list because the interaction is fixed. So you can always select just the first element in the list. There can be some widgets, some buttons that are not active. The paths, as I said before, are static. And since there are part of the interface that are not clickable, typically, the tester, when a tester tries a medium fidelity prototype, is typically engaged in this game, hunt for the hotspot. So to find the few only widgets that are clickable to address the task. So it's good for understanding, for testing the UI and the workflow in general, but it's not good for testing the UI behavior. Okay, that's why, for example, we used the low fidelity prototypes for the heuristic evaluation, for example. So again, it's good to start understanding if the alignment is okay, if the size of the buttons is okay, if the information that are present are okay, but it's not good to understand really the functionality and the interactivity of your prototype. Okay, before the exercise, do you have any questions on this very brief introduction to medium fidelity? Okay, so before the exercise, let's introduce the suggested tool for medium fidelity prototyping, which is Figma. Of course, sorry. Of course, on the one hand, I don't want to speak for 1 hour and a half with a very boring tutorial on Figma. The idea is that you learn by doing, so there is an exercise to start experiencing Figma, of course with my support. At the same time, Figma is very big. You can do a lot of stuff, so we cannot become expert on Figma in 30 minutes. So this will be really a very brief introduction of the main features of the tool and to give you a starting point for your medium fidelity prototyping exercise. By the way, you will not implement something real, something in high fidelity in Figma. So of course, if you want to explore more this application, which is really used by designers, there are a lot of tutorials and guidelines on the web, of course. So the first thing that I want to mention is that Figma is free for education. So if you go to figma.com/education, you can apply for a pro account and you get verified by, I don't remember, you should include probably a photo of your ID or something like that, and you can get the pro account. Then you can use the tool either online in the web version or through the application. Like in this case, you can also install the application, but basically it's the same interface with minor differences. So this is the, let's call it the home page of Figma. You have your projects here, some menus here, and to start design something, you need to create a design file by clicking on this button. Okay, let's do a bit of zoom. And this is the page for a single design project that we can, of course, rename. Class exercise. So this is a project, and as you can see, the screen is divided in 3 main columns. Here on the left, we have the layers and the structure of your project. Here we have the working area in gray, where we actually design our prototype. And here on the right, we have the design and prototype column, where we can actually style our prototypes, and we can add the interactions between different pages, for example. Then, the main component on a Figma project is probably the concept of frame. So what is a frame? It's a parent component, something that can include other components. So for example, you will likely have one component for each screen of your prototype, like the home page, the about page, the settings page, and within these specific frames, you can of course add your buttons, your labels, your images, and so on. So let's create a first frame. Let's suppose that we are developing a mobile application. So I go here in the frame menu. I can of course create a frame from scratch with the mouse, but it's probably more useful to use some predefined frames suggested by Figma. So as you can see here on the right, we have different categories of top-level frames for the phone, for the tablet, for desktop application. So we are developing a mobile application. Let's click on phone, and then we can also select different types of smartphones. Sorry? No, there are also frames for Android here at the beginning. Yeah, it's mostly focused on iPhone. I think you can also import some predefined frames. I don't know. So let's go against iOS. Let's create an Android. No, it's terrible. Let me try with Android Compact. Okay. This will be, for example, the frame. We can also rename it for the home page of our application. So rename home page. Okay? Now, I would like to show you how we can add interactivity to our prototypes. So let's create another page for our application, and let's create a button that connects the two different pages. So let's create another frame. Of course, it's better if you use the same sides. So let's select again Android Compact. And this will be, for example, I don't know, the About page. So let's rename this About. Okay, now let's create a button in the home page that redirects me to the About page. How can I do this? So there are different ways of creating buttons. You can start from the text, you can start from the container. Let's start from the text. So I click here on text, and I add a text in my home page. Let's call it About. As you can see now, we have a text within our parent frame, which is the home page. That's fine. Let's increase a bit the font, and we can do that in the Design tab here on the right. So I click on the text, and somewhere I can increase the font here. So I don't know, 24. Okay. Now this is not a button, it's just a text. Let's add the container for the button. And I can do this by selecting the text, object menu, and then I can click on add auto layout. There is also the shortcut. If I click on this button, okay, as you can see, Figma put a frame that encapsulates my text. So now I have a frame and then the text inside the frame. And this is the shape, in a way, of my button. Let's rename also the frame. Let's call it BTN About. Now, of course, I can also style this container. So if I select the button shape, I can add, for example, always in the Design tab, I can add a color through a fill color. Let's do this, I don't know, green? No? Okay. So we will not focus too much on visual layout in this exercise because we do not have time. And also please remember that in medium fidelity you should not use colors. So this is just a very generic tutorial. Then we can probably modify the shape. I can add some corner radius here, I don't know, 20 pixels. And if I want, I can also change the color of the text. So instead of, can use white color probably. No, sorry. Okay. And then, as the last thing, I can also use some shortcuts to align the button in the parent container, which is actually the home page. So as you can see here, there is the alignment menu. I can align the button to the left, to the right, to the center of the screen, and so on. Okay, let's align this to center top. Then we can, of course, put some margin here, but it's not important for the sake of this tutorial. Okay, then, in the About page, let's add a very simple text just to show that this is the About page. Okay? And then now the question is, how can I connect this button with this page? So I click on the button, and instead of using the Design tab, I use the Prototype tab. And actually, I can add an interaction on the button. So I click on plus, and interactions are composed of a trigger and an action. And I can have actually different triggers. So on tap, on drag, while hovering, and so on. We are in a mobile application, so most interactions will be based on tapping something on the screen. So the trigger will be on tap, and then I can associate an action to that trigger. which in this case is navigate to another page. So navigate to destination, and there is just one destination available, which is the about page. So now there is an arrow that connects my button to the new page. And if I want to try this, I can run the prototype using this button. So I run the prototype. And as you can see, Figma also uses some real smartphone to convey the idea that this is a mobile application for that specific smartphone. There is the button that right now it's covered by the camera, but anyway, it's not important. If I click on the button, I'm redirected to the new page. So this is the kind of interactivity that you can achieve in medium fidelity in particular. Okay. Buttons, interactions. Of course, as I said before, you can design things from scratch, but what's useful in this kind of tools is typically how you can reuse things. And first of all, let's imagine that you have designed a button that you need to use multiple times in your project. So instead of recreating this about button every time from scratch, you can transform this into a component so that you can then reuse it without having to recreate it from scratch. How can I do that? I right-click on the button, and I click on Create Component. So as you can see now, it's in violet in a way. So this means that now my button is a component, and it has been included in a library that can be accessed here in the Assets menu. Okay. So in the Assets, you have your own internal library that now includes the About button. So if you need to replicate this in another page, you click on the page, you go on the About, for example. It doesn't make sense, but it's just to show you how it works. You go on the new page, you click on Assets, you go into your own library, and you can insert an instance of your button. Okay? So you can design things that you need to reuse once and then reuse your components. And this could be important. Okay, you can design your own components, but as I said before, you can also reuse components, elements created by other designers. Okay. So first of all, if you go on the Figma homepage, there is a community tab where you can really find a lot of projects that you can inspect and potentially reuse. So for example, you can have very specific projects on specific interfaces, but you can also have design kits like this material design is probably a collection of components designed following the material design by Google, okay? Or the iOS and iPad OS kit, it's probably a collection of components that are designed specifically for iOS that you can easily import in your project, modify as you want, and reuse. You can also find some of these components from your project. So instead of looking into your own library, you can also search on the web if there are the components that you need. So let's suppose you want to insert some paginated results. So you need pagination, so you need the classic next, previous, and so on buttons. You can look for components like this here in the assets. And as you can see, there are some components that you can easily insert in your project, like this one or this one, maybe it's better. You can insert an instance, you can resize it, you can move it in your pages, you can, in the design tab, you can change the colors and so on, okay? you can also probably edit the number of numbers here, and you can actually modify as you want the component. Okay? Any questions on this? Now, the last thing I want to show you, it's an interaction type which is actually very common, and you will probably need it, which is scrolling some content on the device. This is, of course, useful for mobile applications, but also for websites as well. So how can we design something that can be scrolled in the interface? So let's suppose, let's remove this. Let's suppose we are designing a social media. Let's delete the about page. And we want to design the feed, the news feed, with some posts that can be scrolled vertically, okay? First of all, as I said before, we can design each post from scratch, but we can also see if there are some components that we can reuse. So let's go in the assets and let's look for, I don't know, social media. Okay, there are some suggestions. Then, of course, if you look in the Figma community, you can find more. But anyway, let's, I don't know, let's use this one. It's a sort of social media post, I don't know. Insert instance, okay? Then we can probably modify it. For example, we can decide to, this is the post. We can decide to maybe remove this text. No. Okay. You can maybe remove, sorry? It's only hidden, you're right. It's probably blocked in some way. How can I? Okay. Let's try if yes, we can resize it. Then you can probably delete in a better way, but anyway, this is a workaround to delete something. There are some components that are blocked, but you can easily unlock them so that you can modify them freely. By the way, this is our post, and of course we need a collection of posts, so let's replicate this multiple times so that the posts exceed the dimension, the size of the screen. Okay, here we are. So let's look at the layers here. We need to fix something. So right now we have two posts that are within the home page, other two posts that are outside. Let's move them within the home page. Okay. And to organize our page, let's put all these posts within a parent frame, okay, so that it's hierarchically structured. How can I do that? I can select all the posts, right-click, and then frame selection, okay? So this creates a parent frame, which is my news feed in a way. So let's call it news feed. Okay, now as you can see, the size of this frame exceed the home page. What I need to do is to match the scrollable area with the actual area that I have at my disposal. Okay, so I need to resize the frame to the dimension of the screen, so that I have a scrollable area that is from the top to the end of the screen, and then I have some posts that are outside this area, okay? So that I can add an interaction to this frame, and I can say this frame can be scrolled, okay? That's the trick. So now I click on the scrollable area, I go on the prototype tab, And instead of adding an interaction, I can add a scroll behavior. So here there is the overflow field that in this case is no scrolling. I can say that this should be scrolled vertically. So I have this scrollable area that can be scrolled vertically, and there is actually more content that can be scrolled. Let's see if it works. Let's run the prototype. And as you can see, I can scroll the interface with the trackpad in this case. Now, as you can see, the scrollable area is moving towards the top. I can also fix this position so that the scrollable area is fixed in a way, and what is moving are just the posts. And I can do that by clicking again on the frame, on the scrollable area. Somewhere there should be clip content. Okay? If I click on this, the top of the scrollable area stays fixed. Let's see if it's working. Yes. Okay? So the scrollable area is not moving towards the top. It is fixed. What is moving are just the posts. Okay? And then, of course, I can add, for example, the app bar if I want. So I can go here. I can look for another component, app bar, something like that. Okay, there are some examples. Let's put an instance of this. I can place this on top. It's on the home page. It's above the scrollable area. And now there is always the camera, but anyway, okay? There is the app bar, there is the posts that can be scrolled. Question?
What if I wanted to do a map, something that's scrollable in all directions?
Yes, a good question. You can, of course, scroll vertically, but you can also scroll horizontally, and you can also mix these two scrolling mechanisms. So that you can create, for example, a map that can be scrolled in every directions. And of course, you need something that exceeds also the screen in this direction, and then you can add another scroll behavior both directions. Okay. And you can also design something that is scrollable only horizontally. Okay, of course you need to design something horizontally and then do the same trick of having a frame which represents your scrollable area and then assigning an overflow behavior to that area.
What about pinch to zoom?
Pinch to zoom, that's a good question. I don't know if it's possible. We should probably check with a tutorial online. You can probably do it. I just have to check how. Any question? Any other questions? Okay, if there are no questions, we have time for an exercise, which is actually an exercise that is very common among designers, which is you start from a real application and you try to, in a way, do a process of reverse engineering, and so you start to design the corresponding medium fidelity prototype, which is actually the correct, the inverse process. So typically you start from medium fidelity and then you design in high fidelity. Here you start in high fidelity and you try to go back to the medium fidelity version. And it's a common strategy, a common exercise, because it challenges you to find what should be designed, what should be included, which text can be a placeholder, and so on. And our target platform for today is Glovo. I know you know it. And we also have a task and a flow to implement, and I will show you the screenshots in a minute. And the goal is to create a medium fidelity prototype of the Glovo of this specific Glovo task using Figma. Of course, we do not have much time, so there are a lot of screens here in this flow. So I suggest you start with maybe 2 of these screens, maybe 2 connected screens, and then if you have time, you can continue. And this is the task, the flow. Order something from the promotions available on Glovo Express, which is a feature of the Glovo app. And this is the flow. So as you can see here, you have the home page in Glovo. I don't know if it's changed, if it's still like this, but anyway, this is the home page. You click on Glovo Express here. You go here. You need to select something from the promotions. So you go here, you select a first element, then a second element, and then you click order. And you are redirected to the checkout page where there is the map and the button to confirm the order. Yes?
You showed the interaction to navigate, but
yes.
How can we change the here?
What do you mean?
Here when you click on the chicken,
That's part of the exercise, because your clickable elements will be always this one and this one. So it will be fixed, okay? So you cannot, you will not able to select this. Okay? So you should start from this and you should design this in medium fidelity. Okay? That's the exercise. Again, let's maybe focus on the first 2 screens or 2 screens here in the middle, because we do not have much time. We have probably 30 minutes more or less. And then you can also share your screens on Telegram, and then I will show you a possibility from my side. Okay? And if you have any questions, I'm here to try to support you. Okay? Cool. Okay, I know the time was limited, so you probably still need to prototype something to conclude this exercise, but you can continue on your own if you want to practice more before the assignment 4. Just to show you a possible solution, I found it online, so there may be something that is not perfectly aligned with what I said before, but I think it's a good starting point. This is the home page. As you can see, there are a lot of placeholders, but there are things that are properly designed, like the labels of the different menus, and also the position of the elements resembles that sort of circular menu in, yes?
But since we already had to implement the Glovo Express part,
Yes.
do we actually need all the other 7 buttons?
That's a good question. Of course, the other elements are not clickable, and that's one thing. I think since it's a menu and you have a limited number of entities, it's probably better to include all the labels because so that you can really understand if your label is understandable, if it can be found quickly. Otherwise, if you just put Glovo Express and all the other labels are item 1, item 2, item 3, then it's really easy to identify Glovo Express. Instead, in this case, you have a sort of, you have the same experience in a way that you will find in high fidelity. So It's debatable, but I think that in this case, since the elements are limited in number, you can probably use the correct name for each item. Then there are other placeholders like the text here. There is placeholders for the images. There is the search bar, and the icons are the ones that you will probably use, that you will probably have in high fidelity. So I think it's a good approximation. Probably here you could have used the right form of the element in the menu, but I think that's fine. I don't know. I clicked the button, but I didn't want to click it. So I cannot go back, so let me close this and open it again. Okay. Now, as you can see, you can just click on the Global Express icon. So I click here. I'm redirected here to the second page. Again, there is some placeholder like the text for each element, for each product, but there are the correct icons, and the layout is practically the same of the final version. And also in this case, I can just click on Order again. Here I have the list of products. Again, it's not important to specify all the details of the products and the image, but it's important to mimic the same layout, the number of items per each row, and so on and so forth. As I said before, the interaction is fixed, so I can just select the first element. I click here, and there is this new elements that signals that I have added the first element. Then I can add again in a fixed way just this element to my basket, right? So I cannot click to in other positions. And then I can click on Order, and there is the final page. Again, here there is some placeholders. This is a placeholder for a map, so they decided to use this sort of icon of a map so that it's clear that there will be a map there. And that's it, okay? Any questions on this? Do you have any concerns on this solution? I think it's quite, it's a good starting point to understand which are the parts of the interface that should be included as real text, which is what are the parts of the interface instead that can be placeholders. As you can see, you cannot go back, but this would be quite easy to implement. You just need to add an interaction to this button, and that's it. So you can finish this exercise on your own if you want to practice more on Figma. And please remember that in the assignment format, we will publish the text next week probably. You will have to design, to prototype 2 screens. And the advice will be, let's try to prototype 2 consecutive screens so that you can also add some interactivity from one page to another. But all the details will be included in the assignment text. So if you don't have any questions, we can take a 15 minutes break now. And then with Tommaso, you will learn a lot about human-AI interaction. Okay? Thank you.